What happens when two seasoned business leaders get together? They talk shop, of course. Sit back and listen in as Scott DeLong and Vince Moiso share from their experience around current issues facing executives, entrepreneurs, and their leadership teams. The CEO Podcast starts now.
Hey everybody, Vince Moiso here from the CEO Podcast. I'm here as always with my partner Scott DeLong, and we have a very special guest here today with us, Dr. Jim Harris, who is the president of the University of San Diego. He's been the president for the last 7 years. Very, very special for me to have you as a guest today, Jim. The fact that I am both an alumni and a parent. My wife is an alumna of the university as well. We were married in Founders Chapel, and I'm the president of the alumni board currently. And so this is a very special place for me. And I just love the topic. I'm going to let you chime in with a little bit of your background too. But you know what we have today. I thought back to a time, Jim, you'll appreciate this because you're an ex-football player like myself. I thought back to a time I was in high school playing football, and I came back after this is during a game, and the coach says to me, he says, you really got to work on your poise. I need you to have better poise.
Wow.
Well, so the problem was I didn't know what he was talking about.
Didn't know the word.
So I went home that night and I grabbed a dictionary so I could see what poise meant. And, I understood that it was calm under pressure. It was resiliency. And I think today we want to relate that resiliency in leadership. And I was so excited to have you on the podcast because I just love this topic, and I think it resonates, and I don't think that as leaders we talk enough about it. And there's a lot of noise and a lot of things that go on around us, and we have responsibility to others, we have responsibility to ourselves, whether we're talking about an institution or whether we're talking about a business. And we carry weight. We carry a lot of weight, and the ability to have a high level of resiliency. And I love the football analogy, and I think of it as a quarterback because when you got a 300-pound lineman in your face, and you got to step up and throw the ball, even though you know you're going to take a big hit, that's resiliency. And as we relate it to leadership, Jim, I look at the last several years of your presidency, from COVID to all sorts of controversy to this whole movement around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and navigating all of these waters. Wow. just wow.
Well, let's let him introduce himself a little bit.
Yeah, so no, I was there. I was going to say, hey, I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to let you give a little bit of your own background, because you have a really great background in some of these things, and I think the audience would love to hear about it. And then I'll let you relate it to what we're going to talk about today.
Well, Vince, I'm honored to be here today. It's great to be with you. Should we make Scott an honorary alum for the day, or
Let's
for 30
do it.
minutes?
Let's do it.
30 minutes. Yeah.
He's a BYU guy.
BYU guy.
Oh, well, never mind.
Yeah, right.
I was actually being recruited to play ball down here, and my coach at the time said, "You're not going there. You're going somewhere else. So why waste their time?" I was telling Vince a story earlier
wow.
today.
So who did you play football for?
Baseball. I was a baseball.
Baseball. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So I was
Well, BYU is a great university. It's fantastic.
Well, they have their issues too.
We all do.
Yeah, they have their issues too. But I going there as a non-member of the church was a different experience. I actually grew up Catholic.
So were you the Jim McMahon of baseball?
Jim and I were in school together.
Were you really?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. But no, I did not. I actually signed a letter saying I'd follow the rules, so generally I did.
All right.
Most of the time I did.
Most of the time you did.
Most of the time I did, yeah.
Well, it's an honor to be here. My background is mostly I've been in education all my life. I've been a president of 3 institutions This is my third, and I absolutely love it here. I'm married for 41 years, and my wife Mary and I have 2 children, both of whom are USD grads. So great background in terms of connection to USD, and I just love this place, and it means so much
And
to me.
recently a grandfather, as we just learned.
Yeah.
Congratulations on that.
Congratulations. I have a long way to catch up with you, Scott, but I'll be happy to do so someday. So, but it's an honor to be here. How would you like me to start? You want to talk
Well, man,
about
I
this?
would-
Let me make
Okay.
a connection because, well, so what's the difference between education and business and sports and
Sure.
all those different?
Yeah.
We're talking about leadership.
Good place to start.
So I went when I went back to school. I didn't want an MBA. I just didn't think I needed that. But so I found this leadership program, and it was in the College of Education. And I thought, what a weird place for leaders to be, in the College of Education. And what resonated with me was we're talking about the same thing. We're just seeing it from different points of view. The business people
Right.
or the educators. There is a complete different type of politics in the educational world than there is the business world.
Certainly.
But it requires the same type of leader to navigate that. Is the way I'm seeing it.
I would agree with that. Many years ago, when I was first the president of a small college in Ohio, I went to a program at Harvard. It was for new presidents. They're going to teach you how to be a new president in
Yeah.
the first week, and it was valuable. And one of the speakers there was a guy who was in his 80s at the time. His name was David Reisman. And David Reisman he's a sociologist, and he started studying what made for good leadership in higher education. And he'd done multiple studies and he was presenting his information. So they asked whether or not we wanted to have lunch with him, and I agreed to do so. And I felt like I was sitting at the foot of Yoda, right? This is the guy who's written about leadership and sociology and education. And one of the presidents, there were about 7 of us having lunch with him, and one of the presidents asked, what can I do to be successful, to guarantee that I'll be successful as a president? And Reisman didn't pause, and he said, be the living embodiment of the mission.
Yeah.
So if you
That's
believe in the
great.
mission of the organization, whether it's a business or higher education, and you become the living embodiment of that mission, you will be successful. And that's always been a philosophy, or it's stuck with me all these years as a college and university president, that what is the mission of the institution and who do I serve? And I'm serving the institution, and I'm serving all its constituents, and particularly the students are the ones that I focus the most attention on.
So I like that a lot. I'm going to go a little bit further with it, though. I think in that, okay, I'm supposed to be the living embodiment of the mission. Well, the fact of the matter is you find out what the mission is before you get there. And if you can't be that living embodiment, take another job.
Absolutely.
I see too many young people
I-
these days chasing dollars or chasing prestige or chasing whatever they're chasing and taking jobs where they're not a fit with the values or the mission of the organization. So I loved what you said about be the embodiment of the mission. I think that is just
Well,
important.
coming here was actually part of that. I think I did that earlier in my career. I hopped around to a couple different jobs and thought, well, it's more prestigious, a school,
Sure.
or it pays better or something. But actually, it was about when I found the fit. And for me, it was when I was in my previous institution, most recently at Widener, it was to be engaged it was civic engagement about how do you reach out to how do you be a servant leader in a very depressed community. Coming here was about Catholic faith. It was about the values education that we have at the university and the strong emphasis that we have on best practices for undergraduates. And it was just such a draw here that it felt like a calling rather than taking a job.
So not only are you happier in that place,
Absolutely.
you do a better job. It works both ways.
Well, it
You're
does.
just
And
better
also,
at
I
it.
think you could be more resilient then because it means more.
There you go.
It means more to you.
Well, when you have that buy-in, you immediately made me think of, at the board of directors, the alumni board of directors, we have done exhaustive work in the last 5 years of just changing the mission, because I think what's important too is that the mission resonates. Not only does the leader embody it, that you have complete buy-in from everybody, and you've got to be able to exude that mission to a point that everybody's going to buy in and get on that bus with you.
It's not just the leader.
Well,
It needs to
we
be
shifted, and Jim, I don't even know if you know this, but we made it so simple. It's to engage and enrich the Torero community for life.
Yeah,
That's
a
it.
perfect mission statement.
That is it, and it was so easy at that point to embody that
Right.
and get complete buy-in. I immediately, as you guys were talking about that, I immediately thought of that. I want to add something, a little flavor to what you guys were talking about, is not only embody it, but as a leader, I think what I've learned, especially over the last decade, is do so authentically.
Right.
and do so genuinely. And, I found prior to discovering myself, being on that journey of self-development, I found that I could embody anything that I wanted to, if I really wanted to, right? For whatever purpose I wanted it to serve, and I found that was miserable. That was very miserable.
And you can't do it.
And it's exhausting. And when I started to do the things that I wanted to, because I was genuinely and authentically just in love with or had the passion for or whatever, right? Then I could genuinely pursue that.
I had an experience early in my career. Two presidents that I worked for. One was a sister, Frances Marie Threlkill. Unfortunately, she is now deceased, and rest in peace. She's a wonderful leader, and I worked for her, and she was very detail oriented. So her, the way she was authentic was that it was about the details. And now she had come out of struggling small Catholic institutions, and every penny counted. So she asked me one day, Jim, did you know that your budget this year over last year, 1 month difference, was $58 over in your publication budget line? I didn't even know I had a publication budget line. She was so detail oriented. But she was also fantastic at one-on-one. So she could sit with anybody and you felt like you were the most important person in the world. And that's skill set. But she did not have what I would consider, she's not so much a visionary or a strategic thinker, but she led that institution to great success, and she authentically led and got others to do that for her. Then I went to work for a guy by the name of Paige Mulholland, and he, rest in peace as well, he passed away last year, at Wright State University, and he was just the polar opposite. He was the best extemporaneous speaker I ever heard in my life. You could put him in a room and say, name this topic, and he'd know something about it. He had a photographic memory.
Wow.
He was a historian. But he would rather be shot than spend time sitting alone talking about your grandkids.
Yeah.
He just didn't like the small talk. He didn't want to do that.
Let alone a $58 over budget
Absolutely.
item.
He didn't even know I had a budget. So but both of them I learned from, but I had a moment of crisis, Vince, because I didn't know, I couldn't be either of them.
Yeah.
I'm probably a combination of both,
Sure.
And then my own style. But when I found myself trying to be more detail-oriented, it wasn't necessarily a strength that I had. I had to become somewhat more detail-oriented in order to run the ship, obviously. But but both of them were so strong and so successful, but they were authentically themselves, and that's what I've tried to be. It sounds like both of you have as well, and I don't know how else you can lead.
It's a great way to. That's a great way to say
the
it.
The only way you can lead is temporarily, because
Right.
people will find
Good
out.
point.
Yeah.
People will
absolutely.
find out.
Yeah,
It's exposed.
You're not going to be happy doing it. People are going to.
Yeah.
You will be exposed, as you said,
Yeah.
and then you will lose all credibility with folks.
You know, early in my life, I think you might have heard this story, Vince, but one time I was in between high school and college, and I was working as a janitor in a factory and cleaning restrooms and things. I had my little name tag, and I was pushing my cart, and no one ever paid any attention to me. So I went home to my grandmother, who was a refugee from Russia, and lived a very hard life. And I complained to her that people weren't paying attention to me, and she kind of straightened me out a little bit, as grandmas would do, and say, listen, you're going to go to college. No one in our family has ever done that, so stop complaining. And then she said something that's always stayed with me, which is, never forget what it's like to be invisible. And for me, it's been, so when
great.
people ask about authenticity,
Yeah.
but I honestly find it interesting when I talk to people about their personal lives. But then that takes a little more time and energy when people stop me to tell me about, my father's doing better, Jim, or this. But that's who I am. Some people, that may not be their strength, but I don't want anyone to be on this campus and feel invisible.
Yeah, so we talk about that a lot in the work that I do, and this type of work, leadership work, takes time. It's not fast. It's not like filling out a spreadsheet. It just doesn't
Right.
work like that. And if you really want to do a good job with it, you have to take time for the people.
Yeah, and the other thing that Vince and I've shared a little bit about, he had a conversation with Vince. You were a fantastic leader of the Alumni Association during a very difficult time. I'm blessed that you were in that role. Not only were you reasonable and supportive, but you helped me through some tough times, so I appreciate that. And we were talking about one of those times where he was asking me how were we doing during COVID and through the pandemic. And I'm not honestly sure how I got through it, other than my faith, my family, and I think the people around me. I have a very strong team, strong deans, and great support on campus. And without a strong support system, and then I try to take better care of myself. tried to actually lost weight. I actually tried to exercise more, anything to keep myself, because I knew I had to be here for the institution and see it through.
So I want to give you a little more credit than you just gave to yourself, because cultivating that team within the organization takes time and effort as well. It just doesn't happen automatically.
Yeah.
True.
So are things that you did to bring these people together, to bring them into your life, to bring them into your world, so that they could be supportive, because that's just not natural for
Well,
folks.
I understand, but it's also, don't you agree that it's we did it, because they have to be willing partners.
Got to be
And-
engaged, absolutely.
And I do, and I'm really drawn, and
No
you said this
question.
the other day about the idea of servant leadership and Robert Greenleaf's work, and
Yep.
this idea that you come, and I don't always do this, I fail in this, but when you come to it, that I'm the servant first, and I'm trying to figure out, you hire great people, and then you serve them, you try to be, what do they need, how can you empower them, how can you help them be successful, they make the organization run better, and they make you look better. Not that that's the purpose, but you've got great people around you and you're trying to serve them, and I love that. And you have to come to it with a sense of humility. I don't have all the answers. I don't have the answers.
Yeah, Scott and I talk a lot about this. In fact, Scott's finishing up his book on different styles of leadership right now. So I think you're speaking his language right now.
Yeah, I'm loving this.
That said, is I'm just such a huge believer in people, and I think it takes people to run an organization. And we get, being an entrepreneur's organization, we get a lot of talks around systems, and you got to put EOS in place, and you got to put this in place, and it's all around systems and software. And okay, those are just components that will help people at the end of the day.
So we actually have a line that I use in my work that doesn't matter if you put all your money into systems and processes without developing your people first, you're wasting your money.
Right.
Well, and I want to take it, I totally agree with that, because I don't care how great your system is. If you don't have someone in place that can execute, then it's for naught.
Right.
And I want to take it a step further. And I've changed my language. They're not that I don't use the word training, I do, because there's some, we might have a specific software that we utilize. I might have to train somebody on that software.
Or task.
Other than that, we're committed to developing people. We're committed to developing human beings. So when I place 3 people under Scott to learn about leadership,
Right.
He's teaching them leadership for life skills, not business skills, right? And it's things that they take home. So my favorite, some of my favorite one-on-ones are when somebody that works for me tells me, oh, I was with my husband last night and I used what you and I talked about last week, and it was amazing. That's the coolest. I almost don't, anything else, I don't care what you accomplish, because I already know you're good enough to accomplish all the stuff that we put together for our task for the business. That was really cool, because that tells me that they're taking the development that's happening through the business and applying it to their life.
So I actually use a different word than teaching. I use coaching. And that word's thrown around a lot because anyone can be a life coach these days, right? You just hang a shingle on the wall, you're a life coach. But it is coaching and not teaching. The information's out there. There's nothing new. We're not talking about anything new here.
Right.
Everything that you need to know, you learn by the time you're in kindergarten. How to play in a sandbox. So we're just coaching people up to get them to be able to play in the sandbox, right? Take care of your neighbors, take care of your business associates, take care of your students. It's all the same thing. And it's coaching people up rather than teaching them a lesson.
So I told someone this story recently, and they told me this is my first leadership example. So I'm in 4th grade, and this sounds like it's out of the, what was the name with the of the movie where they had the butterfly and they put it in the. Anyway, so the Silence of the Lambs. It sounds like it comes out of there because we had a
leadership lesson from the Silence of the Lambs.
Right, we had a slaughterhouse next to our elementary school. And it wasn't until 4th grade I realized what was going on over there.
Yeah.
And it was my friend Jimmy who told me this, and so his older brother. So we decided, we knew where the hogs were being dropped off, and we were going to free the hogs. On a time on playground, we had recess. You can think of like 300 kids out on the playground. We actually opened the gate and shooed the pigs and the hogs down.
4th grade activist, I like it.
No.
So I'm in the principal's office with my mom and dad, and I remember that this is the right thing we should have done. I had seen some movie about freeing the lions or something, and I remember my father, he wanted to be stern with me, but he was smiling. He's like, I think this is leadership. I'm not sure.
That's good. Hey,
Free to
kindergarten, fourth grade. That's where you learn your lesson, right?
So you'll
Not
be
too
okay.
long.
Well, let's talk. So let's get back to this subject.
Oh, we're gonna have a topic today.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna have a topic.
Talk about what we said we
I
were
love
talking
the
about.
conversation, but I do want to get back to this concept of resilient leadership, right? And we all experience our tests, let's just say,
Trials,
our
yeah.
trials,
Yeah.
right? Jim, I'd love for you to share because there's a laundry list in the last 2 years alone, right? As we go back to late 2019, moving into 2020, and then all the way to the present and dealing with the aftermath,
Right.
I think is still a journey for you. We don't have the time to talk about all of it,
Right.
but maybe you can share with our listeners some lessons learned and maybe some specific lessons learned. You and I have, I've had the pleasure of hearing some of that from you, and I love what you've shared with me. I appreciate it so much, and at the same time, outside looking in, as I've shared with you before, man, nobody better to handle the scenario. How you handled it, when you handled it. So there's so many components of it. It's the language, the messaging, the timing.
Right.
All of these things are so critical.
And the presence, I would imagine, as well.
No, and I think you did an incredible job, and I'd love for you to share with our listeners some of that.
Well, thank you. You're too kind, and it wasn't. It might have looked. There was a lot of sausage being made behind the scenes, as every leader knows
course.
during that time.
Of course.
I would say a couple things that helped. One was the mission focus we talked about earlier. The second is that we built a strategic plan that we actually adhered to, and so some of those pieces, for example, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what we wanted of our community, why we thought that was important, is that reckoning in the United States and around the world happened in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd. There was important places where we needed to stand if we were actually going to live out our mission and also live out
That's right.
our vision for the future. And those were very difficult places to be,
Yeah.
and really difficult conversations. And we had a reckoning, and we had to recognize as an institution that there were things that perhaps we were not doing as well. Even though I might be committed to this work and say that
Right.
I've done this work my whole life,
Yeah.
I probably I missed the boat in some ways in not seeing opportunities earlier. It took this major confrontation in society for me to really step back and say, okay, we can do better, and we must see it. So one of the things that came through, we had a case where something happened on the internet. It became a social media, and it really focused attention on the university in a very negative way. And it dealt with race in America and how that played out on our campus. And there was a case where someone said, well, where these items originated on Twitter must have originated from the university. And I was first set on proving that it wasn't, and we were correct. It did not start at the university. It was at a URL. It was off of.
But your intention was to prove that it didn't.
Didn't.
There's
Right.
the
That's
issue.
exactly right, and that was the
Yeah.
issue. And so,
Yeah.
so then I changed my mindset, and what that experience helped me understand was it wasn't about whether it did or didn't originate here. If someone on my campus or our campus feels that it could have, that means there's some element of their experience that is not
Absolutely.
where it should be. So I
The
think that
perception
was
exists.
that made me take a pause, step back, and I changed my language after that. And I changed the
Yeah.
way I looked at some of these things on our campus. Instead of defending, oh, look at all the things we've done. We're more diverse. We've added these faculty. It was more, okay, let's talk about it from a belonging standpoint, and how is it experienced by others? And that was a reckoning for me.
Wow.
And that was powerful, and I that has stuck with me, and I think it's something that it'll make the institution better because I'll hopefully be a better leader and listen better. I was just with someone today who has just joined our community and is a liaison to other communities in this region, and we were talking, and I just said, I don't understand some of the cultural differences in some of these communities, and I need you to help me. I need to learn, be a learner in this case. So I think that was painful. It was hurtful. I always prided myself on being supportive of people and the dignity of human beings, but I learned a lesson in that case, and I think now I'm trying to apply that now that we're in I don't know if it's we're back to where we were, or that we're in normal, I think we're just in a new type of era, and we have to learn from those
So I
experiences.
like the fact that you brought someone else in to say, show me, because and this was pointed out to me the other day by a friend of mine that said we all have blind spots. It's not that you're bad.
Right.
It's that there's a blind spot. You're not seeing this the way others might be seeing this. So bringing folks in to help you
Right.
open up those blinders a little bit. You may not fully understand completely anyway, but
Right.
understand that they see things differently, that whoever the they
Right.
is we're talking about, and having an intention to serve, as you said, is big.
And have the humility.
Certainly.
And I think I didn't have humility earlier in my career as much as I do now. I think the longer I serve as a leader, the more humble I become. And knowing that I have to bring people into my circle that have other experiences and that I can learn. And it doesn't matter whether they're my age or older or more experience or more degrees. There are people who have, there's a use of language in the Native American about indigenous knowledge. And so
Yeah.
I like that term because that there's local knowledge. It's in Linda Vista, it's on my campus, it's in an art department, it's in different
Absolutely.
segments. And there is knowledge there that I don't possess, and hopefully I'm open to learning more.
Yeah, no doubt. One of the things that popped for me as you were speaking about that experience, and I think it's so appropriate with what we're talking about here. But you were talking about listening. We talk so much about the importance of listening, and I try harder, and I've embraced that it's going to be a lifelong journey for me just to continually improve my listening. And as human beings, we naturally listen to defend, and we very naturally listen to respond.
Right.
And in both of those instances, we're not actually listening. And so I think just the concept of just listen.
Well, the other part of that where you say listen and then we are listening to respond, I found it's been fascinating. I always would respond and be defensive, I think, for many years when people would come out and there would be something they want to talk about, like in a public forum.
Sure.
And they're going on and on about something, and I think that I have to answer what they're basically making a comment about. And I've
Yeah.
learned that sometimes I just say, thank you, and move to the next
We've had at least 3 podcasts just on that. What's the appropriate response? Thank you. And
And
that's
it kind
it.
of takes people, it kind of softens the mood in the
Yeah.
room. It's like, oh, thank you.
One of our most recent episodes, we just said many times, let's say it together, Scott. Thank you.
Thank you, and then shut up.
Exactly.
Don't say anything else. There's a few things that you said in there in this last half hour or so that you talked about that actually the 2 of the last 3 chapters of my book. Humility is a big one. Empathy was another one,
I think that's
and the
key.
third one, and I want to get your take on this. And I think it's the most vulnerable. It's the most controversial portion of the book that I'm writing, and it's on vulnerability. Us big, strong men, we're just not used to that, being vulnerable, and which to me means willing. It's a willingness to trust. It's as simple
I
as
agree with that. I think there's an element, particularly with the new generation. So if you want to put them in terms of my language, which is future students and current students, or maybe in your language, more customers, that generation is looking for authenticity, and
Yep.
they're looking for you to be vulnerable, to express that you don't know and don't have all the answers. Now that takes courage to do.
Yeah.
There's an element of courage in that to allow yourself, particularly, for example, we started a session at my board, or the board at the university, and we always had committee meetings. We have the full board meeting. It was very scripted. You have the materials you have to study, and then you have a conversation about it. And what I created was a separate space where we're not in session. It's not an executive session. It's just, I have all of these brilliant people
Just
sitting
a
in this room.
conversation?
Just a conversation.
Yeah,
It's there where I
great.
bring some of my most vulnerable moments and say,
Yeah.
I don't know what to do here. I'm not quite sure how to handle this. Or I'm thinking about this. What do you think? And I can either take their advice or not, but
Right.
it helps me. But it took a while being in my role as president to know that they supported where we're heading. They saw some confidence, or they had some confidence in me by that point. Then I felt I could be more vulnerable. Because if you don't have success with the financials, if you don't have success with the fundraising, if you can't bring in the enrollment, if the school is faltering, you have to prove you can be a leader. So there's this element for me to balance that. I'm a good leader, demonstrate that through the traditional means, but then be vulnerable at the same time. And that's a difficult task, particularly
It
as
is.
a new leader.
Well, and I think you're right about the young people. So you talk about your students and future students and that sort of thing. So for us, it's not just customers; it's our employees.
Yes, right.
That's
Absolutely.
who. This young generation that people of our age complain a lot about because whatever we think about them, this is the life that they are living. So two things.
Right.
One, we're the ones that raised them. And two, those are our current customers, current employees, and it's us that is going to need to make the change. The older generation. We can no longer lead the way we thought we were supposed to in the past.
That's right.
General pattern just doesn't work anymore.
It doesn't, and I'm the house optimist about our future, both as a country and the world, because I believe in this generation. They can drive me crazy sometimes with some of their requests and activism that they'd like to just take hold. But I think they've been through quite a bit as a generation.
No
even
doubt.
though we don't want to admit it. There's quite a bit they've been through. It's amazing to me, for example, our seniors, they're born, it's 9/11, you go through the Great Recession, they remember families losing jobs, they've been through a pandemic, we've been in multiple wars. It's a different, it's a very interesting
different.
group, and I think they're going to be great leaders in the future.
Well, I know their heart's in the right place.
I do.
Just like when we were young, we weren't as
We
smart
don't
as we
know,
thought
right.
we were, right? But if your heart's in the right place, you'll gain that knowledge and you'll be able to do the
Yeah,
things.
people
that
should
you
not
do.
worry about this
I
generation.
don't
We're going
think
to be
so.
fine.
Well, we spent an entire podcast episode on vulnerability. I think we could go so deep on that topic, and I do think there are a lot of leaders around this country, whether you're talking business leaders, political leaders, institutional leaders that aren't willing, and I think we need to get willing. I think when you said, I think it's great to hear you say that you sit in a meeting among your leaders and your peers and say, I don't know. I mean, I know what I know what I don't know, and I don't know what I don't know, and it's all okay. And if I don't know something, just, I think that's the most vulnerable thing you can do as a leader is simply just to say, I don't know, I need help, and I have a room full of really great people around me that can help. And so I want to empower. We talk a lot about empowerment,
Right.
and how special that is. Nothing better that you can do for a person than to give them the power to make decisions, to engage them in a way that makes them feel special and
Right.
drives their own purpose. And sometimes as a leader, you just have to go ahead and admit, and I'm going to say it right here, right now, I don't know everything. Shelby, if you're listening,
I hear that, Shelby.
I don't know everything.
I want to take another step back because as you were talking, Vince, it reminded me of something that you said, Dr. Harris, about Robert Greenleaf and servant leadership. You realize that theory is 50 years old.
That's amazing, isn't
And
it?
we are just now getting closer. We still don't have a lot of servant leaders. A lot of people are claiming they're servant leaders,
Right.
and they're still not. And that's a 50-year-old theory. Transformational leadership, 45 years old.
Right.
Yeah.
Authentic leadership, 30-something years old,
Mm-hmm.
and we're just now getting to it?
Right. Right.
What a shame.
That is
We've
a
wasted
shame.
some time.
Well, at least we're here. We're
At least
here.
we're here.
We're here now, and I think as leaders sitting here right now, or other leaders that are listening, we have the power to make change. That's what we're here for, and I think I learned. I'll end with this. I earned such a valuable lesson. I was listening to Mark Trestman, who at the time was head coach of the Chicago Bears. And he was talking about, I was at a coaching clinic and I'm listening to all these other coaches talk about the X's and the O's, right? Strategy, tactics. He got up and he talked about this book by Joe Ehrman called Inside Out Coaching. It's a wonderful book. And he was talking about his obligation to young men and turning them into good human beings and putting them out in the world as a football coach. He's the head football coach,
Right.
NFL coach. And I'm standing there just completely blown away. He came off stage. I had the honor of getting to speak to him for a minute. And I said, Coach, there's 500 guys in the audience. And I said, Coach, were they listening? Everyone else is talking about X's and O's. And he says, I only care about the one that was listening. That's it.
Wow.
I care about the one guy that's now going to go to his team and take what I said to heart. It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
That's a great way. That's a great perspective.
It is. Well, we're getting at time.
Okay.
And probably a little bit even over time because this was fun. So, Dr. Harris, we really appreciate the time that you.
It's Jim, you know that. So.
Okay, Jim. Really appreciate the time that you've
Thank
given
you.
to us and the conversation. It fits in line with exactly the way we talk to our audience. So, thank you very much.
I hope I can get a copy of your book when you're finished.
Absolutely.
And I'll even pay for it. So you.
I won't, Scott. I want an autograph.
Can I sell some for your course?
Funny, we talk about autographs. David McCullough spoke at an event I had at another institution, and we had lunch together. And wonderful man, the great author and the great historian. And I took 2 books in that he had written because he's my favorite author. 8 years later, we had him back to speak again, and I was running late, and I wanted to go to. I'm having dinner with him with another group of people. I pulled the same 2 books off the shelf and put it in front. Would you autograph these books? He opens it up, and there's his autograph. He says, "Jim, I think you need to get more books."
So
a few more.
So good. Double autograph.
It's
That's okay. Nothing wrong with that.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you, guys.
Well,
Really
Jim, we
enjoyed
like
this.
there's some like we do traditionally with the CEO podcast, and I'd love to have you finish us up and just give our listeners, one piece. So any aspiring leader that's listening right now, or those leaders that haven't really embraced transformational leadership or really embraced vulnerability or anything like that, if there's one thing that you can think that, hey, either stop doing this today and start doing that tomorrow, or really if you've got a recommendation of a book or any of those types of things that our
Scott's
listeners can
There
take
you go.
away.
Scott's book.
Thanks.
I would suggest that what's helped me is to write down your own mission statement and/or your own leadership philosophy. For me, I've used the
Personal mission statement.
personal mission
Okay.
statement, personal philosophy. So for me, I've used the acronym HEART. So humility or be honorable, either one of those. Empower or empathy, depending on how you want to look at that. Be authentic. Focus on the relationships around you, and then maintain the human touch. And so that always brings me back to when I'm thinking about making decisions. Am I being honorable? Is it a decision I'm making with integrity? Am I empowering those around me to make decisions and so forth? So whatever for each of us is your philosophy, I would develop my own mission statement, and that's a little bit longer for me. But I want to go back and rewrite that here. In fact, I just committed to the basketball team. I spoke to them last week, the men's basketball team, and I committed I was going to go back and write my mission statement and ask them to do the same. So I think it's
love
having
that.
your own philosophy and know that. And sometimes I have to look at it. Some other
Yeah.
people can memorize those things.
I love it. That's a great way to end it.
Yeah, that is.
Anything you want to promote other than the university? Is there anything that's upcoming at the university, or anything that's special that you
Come
want
out and see the USD women's volleyball team ranked number 4
Number 4
in
right
the
now.
country.
Wow.
Number 4 in the country
Pitt
right
and
now.
Ohio State were in the top 10, and we beat UCLA and San Diego State last
We
week.
did.
Congratulations, that's
We're
great.
really rolling, so it's a
That-
lot of fun. But please, lots of opportunities. Go to our website. A lot of opportunities on campus.
Love it.
Thanks for being such a great alum, and you were a good honorary alum for a half hour.
Well,
You earned it.
I get my piece. Then.
You get it.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Well, as always, we appreciate you listening to the CEO podcast. We'd love your feedback. You can reach out to us at scottandvince@gmail.com. And please check us out on all the normal channels, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can watch us on YouTube. Please follow us on YouTube. And until next time, cheers, Scott.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for the CEO Podcast. Please visit us at theceopodcast.net, where you can learn more about our co-hosts and listen to past episodes. If you would like to have a discussion and dive deeper into any topic, there is also an option to contact Scott or Vince to schedule some time with them. Thanks for listening.